To be humble, to be kind, it is a giving of the peace in your mind. To a stranger, to a friend, to give in such a way that has no end. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other and nothing more. And to be bold, to be brave, it is the thinking that the heart can still be saved. And the darkness can come quick, the danger's in the anger and in the hanging on to it. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other, nothing more. And tell me what it is that you see, a world that's full of endless possibilities, and heroes don't look like they used to, they look like you do. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. I'm Reverend Marcus Liefert. So glad to be with you celebrating this weekend when we honor, remember, celebrate the legacy of that great American preacher and prophet, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. May his memory be a blessing today and all the days to come. If you're visiting with us for the first time, I especially want to welcome you here. We hope that no matter who you are or how you make your living, no matter whom you love or how you experience the sacred, you'll feel welcome among us here in the fullness of your being. Everyone is invited to stick around after the service, make your way all the way across the atrium into the social hall where we serve lunch freely every week. Linger if you can for conversation and connection over a meal. It's good to be together in times like these. We gather each week at this intersection of arts, justice, and spirituality, knowing that we gather on the traditional unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, Huchiyun. May we do our part to repair that covenant with the earth and with indigenous peoples that has been broken. May we have the courage and humility to live into a new solidarity with them. We are thinking about this worship season, what it means to incubate the futures that are coming, how we use our intentions and our energies, the heat of our lives to nurture and warm into being our values. If there's anything on your heart this morning that you want named aloud in our service, you can write it in the memory book in the back of the sanctuary. And no matter what you're bringing, I hope that you will find space for it here in this sanctuary. Will you rise in body or in spirit? And we're going to sing a hymn, but before we do that, we're going to turn back and wave to those joining us on YouTube or Facebook. So glad you're with us wherever you are. And turn and greet your neighbor. Let them know, happy Sunday, welcome to church.
I'd like to invite Asa, Marissa, and Eric Dadup Wilson to light our chalice this morning. They'll light the chalice as I read words from a letter from a Birmingham jail by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And that in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty. Maybe so. want to tell you a story today that comes with a little bit of a backstory. So first a backstory and then a story. And the backstory is a myth that you have probably all heard many times. One of the oldest myths that still gets routinely discussed in American society, and that is the myth in the Torah, Genesis 1 and 2, that the creation of the earth. Right? God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, and then in about 6 days, God created the world. And God peopled the world with humans, starting with Adam and Eve, and they lived in the Garden of Eden, and all was perfect. And then Adam and Eve messed it up. And we are dealing with that forever, right? The suffering and the pain that Adam and Eve caused is something that continues in the world today. Paradise is gone. So that's a myth that is told in the Old Testament. Now, about 600 years ago, a Jewish scholar named Isaac Luria retold that story. He drew on Genesis, and then he drew on all sorts of other things in the Torah to retell that story. And that's the story I want to tell you today. So, in the beginning, the world was filled with spirit. The world was so filled with spirit that there wasn't room for creation. Spirit was everywhere. And so the first act of God, when they decided, I want to create something, they had to make room for creation. And so God took a big, deep breath in. So we all take a big, deep breath in. And that's the first act. Cleared out some of the spirit to make room for creation. We have created a void. And now we can begin to create. And the second act was the same as in Genesis. God said, "Let there be light." Now here's a difference. In this story, God worried, if God worries, God was concerned that the light was too strong, that it would just, the spirit would just fill right back up and there would be no room for creation. And so God decided, we're going to send out the spirit of light in 10 glass vessels. Think of them as really, really, really big glass ships. Bigger, 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 bigger. And so God created the ships and then put the light inside. And the ships began to move down into the world. But God made a mistake. Thank you. Either the light was too powerful or the glass was just not strong enough. But one by one by one, each one of those glass vessels first cracked and then broke apart into millions of tiny pieces. They went everywhere. It is the reason that we have stars, every grain of sand, all of the seeds. The shards went everywhere. If anyone has ever broken a glass on their kitchen floor, tiny little pieces of light everywhere in this new world. And as a result, God created humans in order to repair the world, to go about and pick up each one of those tiny shards of glass, to find the light, to find the divine spark in all creation and begin to gather it back together, to begin to repair the world. So this is the story of Tikkun Olam, The idea that we are here, we were created not to mess things up, but to fix things, to go about our lives looking for the light in us, looking for the light in strangers, looking for the light everywhere, gathering it back up, and gradually repairing the world. And that is my story. If the kids would like to come out with me, if everybody could rise in body or spirit and sing Lead with Love as we go.
Hello, my name is Peter Barnholt. For the people that haven't met me, I'm the facilities manager here at the church. Marcus has invited me to come up here and talk about my career in glass blowing, or a little tidbit of it. There's two major kinds of glass. There's Pyrex glass, which is commonly found in your kitchen or labware, and there's soft glass, which more chandeliers, vases. I've had the opportunity to work with both. They have both different thermodynamics. They don't work together. They expand and contract at different rates. Marcus wanted me to speak about a time where things didn't work out. And there's a piece I was working on that came out of my mind. It was a gorilla mask with it chewing on bamboo. I don't know where I came up with it, but it was just sitting in my head. I had to make it. Never seen it done before. I had never done it before. And it was a multi-day process, making the pieces the first day, sketching it out, and the second day putting it together. Second day went fine. Piece was amazing. Turned out exactly how I wanted it to. Put it on the studio floor. A month later, collector came in and said, "I love it, but I want two of them." And generally, there's kind of a rule with all the artists in the studio. The first time you make something that came out of your mind, it goes really well. The second time, generally not so much. So, okay, great. This person wants a second one. I'm a starving artist. I need that sale. So spent a second day making the pieces, making the bamboo, making the hand, making the eyes. Second attempt didn't go so well. Ended up on the floor, which was a very common thing in the studio. You'd hear glass breaking, and you kind of didn't talk about it. You let the people work through the process. Sometimes they would smash the rest of it in the corner, but as long as they got back to the bench and started again, we didn't really talk about it that much. So again, third attempt, a whole day of making the pieces, a whole day of assembling it, and this one went really well. It worked out, and the person was very happy to have 2 gorilla masks that came out of my imagination. Yeah. And that's my little interpretation of the dance of temperatures with glass. If everything's not just right, it's not going to work. Yeah, you just got to stick with it. Thank you.
Perfect. We've been trying to figure out, our worship team, a ritual to honor properly this moment, this day tomorrow, in which the incongruity of the inauguration with the celebration of Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy feels like a shattering of so many of our hopes and dreams for our country. So I'm just going to invite us to take whatever you are feeling about this moment and the day tomorrow and to just feel it in your body for a moment. If there's a piece of construction paper, if you want to crumple that up in a moment when I shatter this glass, or if you want to grip the pew ahead of you, or if you need to stomp your feet, or just hold your head in your hands in grief, whatever it is that would allow you to just take a moment to feel those energies building inside, the heat of this moment, the frustration of the crucible in which we find ourselves on the verge of a moment of shattering. So I'm going to break this glass. I invite you to do what you need to do, vocalize what you need to vocalize, let that grief or rage have some expression in this moment. And then take that deeper breath. Let it fill your body from your toes to your fingertips, to your neck and shoulders, to the crown of your head. Let yourself be strong enough, this vessel of your body, to hold whatever is moving through you. And if you crumpled some paper, maybe you uncrumple it, and while Brian takes us forward with this piece of music, to write down a word or a phrase of what it is that you hope to make, to rebuild out of this moment of shattering. invite you to take another deeper breath, to let your body settle in more deeply to this space, to this moment, to feel your connection down to this good, this sacred earth, strong enough, big enough to hold all that is in you. To turn inward with me. A few lines of ancient poetry from Isaiah. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. When you walk through the fire, the flames will not set you ablaze. Sometimes for the transformation we require, nothing will do but heat. Like the alchemy of dough into bread, of sand into glass, sometimes our lives, sometimes our society requires a certain degree of heat for the changes needed. God of new possibility, of hope in the unfurling future, even as we grieve the devastation of homes of our friends and families, of the lives lost to the wildfires raging around our neighbors to the south, give us faith in a deeper fire, in a sacred fire. Remind us of all that heat has wrought in our lives before, the blazing passion of new love, the warm embrace of a favorite blanket, the searing flash of new truth landing in the heart, the boiling over of what's remained unspoken for too long. Breathe the hot breath of creation upon us, pump warm blood through our veins when we would flinch from the memory of touching hot things, from the flush of embarrassment or the agony of love's burning loss. Remind us that our lives are forged in fire. And though our becoming requires us to sometimes turn up the heat, we will not be burned. The flames will not set us ablaze. Remind us, O God, of breaking open and growing toward of the redwood seed, the way it lays waiting at the forest floor, inert, unable to grow, until the divine spark of life within is touched by holy, terrifying fire from without. May we have such courage to offer the life that lays waiting within us to the world's beckoning blaze. May we dwell in quiet, in stillness, in a life-giving heat together. In this community of care and witness, we hold one another through the seasons of our lives and lift up those joys and sorrows, griefs and gratitudes among us. We are joyful with Beth Pollard to join the world of grandparenting with the birth of beautiful Leora. Congratulations, Beth and family. Wynne offers the prayer, may I be inspired with what is mine to do, and when. Someone asks, please give blessings to Judith Marie Frank, who deals with dementia. Helen and grandkids, Katie and Langston, send love and birthday hugs to Sheldon, who is turned 75 this past Friday. Happy birthday, Sheldon. Marcia Lanier shares, my friend's son is in the hospital because he was hit by a car. Please keep him in your thoughts and prayers. And Richard Hanway shares, he's grateful for the long life of his father, James William Hanway, who died last Sunday at the age of 96. Joanne, who had a fainting moment in service last week, says, thanks for people's concerns. I'm better now. Yes, we are so glad you are. And someone invites us, please bless Sydney as she travels today to Washington, D.C. for a new chapter in her life. May her life be a blessing in that place that so badly needs it. For all of these names that we've said aloud, for all that yet remains in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, may we know that what each of us holds here in this sanctuary or gathered from afar, wherever you are, is held in the loving embrace of this community and by a nameless love beyond all knowing, a love that cannot and will not let us go. May it be so, and amen. Let's remain seated as we sing again together, gathered here. There was a knock on my door a couple years ago during election season, and I answered the door, and usually I hate talking to people who knock on my door about the election or whatever else they might be coming for. But this time I recognized immediately the person knocked on my door was Pamela Price, who was running to be the Alameda County District Attorney, and I was excited to talk to Pamela Price. She said, "Hi, I'm Pamela Price." I said, "I know." I was excited to talk to Pamela Price because she was bringing a vision for what justice could really look like in our society to the district attorney's office, a place of real power to enact that vision. and I was excited about it. And one of the great tragedies of our local elections this past November is that she was recalled from that office. I don't think recalls are generally a good idea, and I especially didn't think it was a good idea to recall her. But we got to talking that day on my front porch about what she was planning to do with that district attorney's office that had for so long held such a different shape than the one she imagined for it. I said, "You've got your work cut out for her." And she said, "I know, but I've got this. I know how to run an office." I said, "Okay." And she took another moment with me, and the thing I remember her saying after she found out I was a minister, I think it was, she said, "You know, these people, they don't know what justice is. These people running our justice system, they've forgotten what justice is. They don't know what justice is." When the fabric of society is so far from the vision of justice that we try and remember each week when we listen to sacred texts or contemporary poems or sing old songs and tell old stories, when we try and rekindle in our living memory that vision of justice that has been held and passed down by people through generations, we know that its creation sometimes does require heat. Have you heard of the big blow-up? Do you know the story of the big blow-up? It was 1910, and it was the biggest forest fire that has ever burned in the United States of America. I think it was 3 million acres that burned, Idaho and Montana into Washington, all the way up to British Columbia. The big blow-up. The U.S. Forest Service, I think it was the National Forest Service then, had just been created under the leadership of that wild, reckless conservationist, Teddy Roosevelt. And the U.S. Forest Service, in response to the big blow-up, 3 million acres burning, was able to get the nation to back it with more and more funding. I think their funding doubled from one year to the next and continued to increase year over year as they took on their mission of suppressing all forest fires. It didn't work. By the 1960s or 70s, ecologists had proven that it was a necessity to allow forest fires to burn for the health of the ecosystem, that if there was too much fire suppression, that would actually create a bigger blow-up to come. So there's a dynamic here. There's the cooling and the heating. There's a dynamic process of how we engage in the work of justice making that has to do with tending to when things are too cold or when things are too hot. And I do think about that image of the glass blower. I think about the glass blower who heats the glass up. Is it to 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit, Peter? It's just this molten hot glass, and then cools it down to just a mild 2,000 degrees in order to start to shape it. And if you've ever watched a glass blower at work, you've seen that dance, right, of the coming in and the coming out, the pushing into the crucible to heat up, the coming out to let it cool down, all the while moving, spinning. And what's required the entire time is that the glassblower hold that vision in their mind of the vessel that they are attempting to shape. The vision that will guide their dance in and out of the crucible, their dance of moving that glass along its point on the end of I don't know what the stick is called. I'm sure Peter could tell us. When that glass moves, it's moving in response to a vision firmly held by the artist. So the artist has to know what it is that vessel's going to look like. But we're caught in this place where so many who are ostensibly responsible for our justice system don't know what justice is. When we have a school-to-prison pipeline that thinks it's a good idea to lock up teenagers, and some of them send them to prison for the rest of their lives, they don't know what justice is. When we blame fires raging through people's homes on diversity, equity, and inclusion, we don't know what justice is. The nominee for the Attorney General, ostensibly the highest ranking justice official in the land, can't say that they would hold their loyalty to the Constitution over their loyalty to the president when those things come in conflict. I don't know what justice is. And it's why King's legacy endures the way it endures. And there's so much to say about that incredible man. There's so much to say about his theological gifts, about the ways that he organized for a vision much more radical than we usually give him credit for. But there's something to that elementary school version of Dr. King as well. The Dr. King who is so notably whitewashed and remembered in I Have a Dream. Because what King did and what outlasted the shattering of his life was a clear articulation of a vision of justice. It's what he did in that most famous speech. It's what he did over and over again as he inspired people to action, was hold before us a clear vision of what justice is. And he said, and it's one of those phrases that when you think about it too much, it starts giving you trouble. So I wanted to just bring it back up in front of us. He said, because it gives us hope, but maybe a demanding, hard hope in a moment like tomorrow, that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It can feel so out of key, so painful to the ears in a moment that is so dissonant with that vision of justice. And yet when he spoke those words, he was speaking them to people who knew in their bones and in their bodies that those moments of shattering had come, were coming, would come again, that their lives and their bodies would be at risk if they were to continue pursuing that justice-shaped bend. People who knew their dreams had been shattered, who knew that risk after risk was the only path that justice-shaped bend could take to reach its destination. King was, when he said that, quoting, I think, and making more eloquent, the words of an obscure 19th century Unitarian preacher, Theodore Parker. This transcendentalist firebrand, Theodore Parker, was in that crowd with Emerson and Thoreau and so on. He knew some suffering in his life. He grew up and lost 7 siblings and both of his parents to tuberculosis. He became an avid abolitionist in the years after the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850, up until the Dred Scott decision and the Civil War. He was fighting for the freedom of people who had escaped slavery and made it to New England, where he preached. Now, the story we like to tell about Theodore Parker is that he had a pistol in his pulpit. He would preach with a pistol in his pulpit in order to scare off and maybe even take that shattering risk of firing it at slave catchers who might dare to come into his congregation and try and capture people who had escaped from slavery who were worshiping with him. It was the kind of risk-taking he was willing to do. The story we don't like to tell about Theodore Parker is that the Unitarian ministers who served the congregations nearest to him, his little conference of 5 or 6 clergy around him, kicked him out. He was ejected from the Unitarian fold because he was too radical for his colleagues of the time. And we have inherited both of these strands. I think this strand of desire to be that radical voice that shapes out of our lives, out of our shattering, a vision of justice, and one that would rather play it safe and stay behind what King once called the sanitized stained glass windows. We have a dilemma before us. We have been called by this moment to take risks on behalf of our values. We've been called by this moment to take a stand. I've been walking in my new neighborhood. We haven't quite moved in yet, but I'm taking it in, and one of my neighbors has printed in a giant poster on their wall words updated from that famous passage by the German pastor during World War II. The updated words are, first they came for the immigrants, and I was not an immigrant, so I did not stand up. Then they came for the journalists, and I was not a journalist, so I did not stand up. Then they came for the trans folks, and I was not trans, so I did not stand up. And of course, when they came for me, there was no one left to stand. You know the words. And so this moment that's going to ask us to take risks. This is a collective process. This is a process in which we will have to work together to figure out what are the right risks, what are the ways that we might put our well-being on the line for a vision of justice that we hold even when the glass shatters, maybe especially when the glass shatters. That moment, Peter assures me that that glass is infinitely recyclable. And so when that glass shatters and falls to the ground, that's the moment when the artist needs to remember their vision, hold it strong enough to get through a hard moment, pick up that glass. You've seen that with the molten at the end, picking up the glass right off the ground, getting it back eventually into the crucible to be forged once more towards a vision. What is it that will keep us with that vision clear of a just society, clear enough that we might take risks, that we might worry more about how we're going to stand up for our values than about the liability or the way it might inconvenience us. It's not easy, but it's something we're going to have to figure out together. One last story. This is a Buddhist tale. It happened after the Buddha was enlightened and was going around to offer his teachings and receive alms from people to survive on. And he comes to the door of a wealthy man to receive his alms. And while the servant goes to get the food to bring it to Buddha, Mara, the Hindu god of death, this destructive force who is furious with Buddha for having relinquished his fear of him, comes and sets the ground before him ablaze. And so when the servant returns with the food to deliver to the Buddha, he finds that the ground before the Buddha is full of hot coals, and he cannot pass. And the servant's scared and goes back to the master of the house, and the master comes out now with the food himself and looks. And this is the question. This is the question before us for this wealthy man in his house at the top of the hill, to look and see the Buddha in need, the Buddha beckoning not just with hunger, but with the gift of a real aliveness, of a vision of how life might be. And before him, this fiery pit of coals. And the story says that somehow, some reason, this man decided to walk across the fire. And then it goes on with a lotus that lifts him up, and he doesn't get burned, he gets carried over. But the point is, he makes the choice, not knowing if he will be burned or not, to risk for something he cares deeply about. May we forge of our lives, each of us, and of our collective life together, heating and cooling, returning to the crucible, shattering after shattering, returning to pursue a vision of justice that leads us onward. May we help to bend that arc of the universe, knowing it will leave shattered glass in its wake. Bend it because our hearts and our souls call us to justice. May it be so, and amen.
Good morning. I'm Michael DeWitt, and I'm a member of your Board of Trustees. In our covenantal community, we share the responsibility of pursuing our mission by giving generously of our time, talent, and treasures. I invite you to support the work of our church by giving electronically by scanning the QR code on the back of your badge, or by putting cash or check donation into the donation envelope that you'll find in the back of the pew in front of you, and then put it into the donation box beside the fountain in the atrium as you leave the service. Each week, half of our offerings are shared with a nonprofit Good Neighbor organization. The Good Neighbor organization for this month is Albany Thrives Together. Albany Thrives Together promotes health and wellness for low-income and unhoused community members through outreach, free showers, laundry, and other essential services. In addition, they advocate for deeply affordable housing options. They believe for a community to thrive, each member must thrive. Will you join me in rededicating ourselves to our mission? We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service.
I want to share with you a few things happening in the life of our community. You can always find these, of course, on our website under the week ahead. I want to let you know that today, right after the service, immediately after, we're having a special congregational meeting to vote to ordain our Director of Family Ministries, Catherine J. I'm so thrilled that this is happening. Please stay if you can and enact what is a deeply held value for us, that the congregation, the people ourselves, are the ones who choose who will be a spiritual leader among us. Later after that today at 1 o'clock, the humanists are having a meeting, and they were going to discuss, if you were a senator, what legislation would you propose? Everyone's welcome for that discussion. Tomorrow, a lot of us are getting together down at the El Cerrito Civic Center, City Hall, I think, for the Martin Luther King Jr. Parade. We're gathering at 9:30 there. Join us if you can. Next week's personal theology picks right up on this theme, I believe. Dave Belden is talking about restorative justice. Dave's a member of our congregation, and he's going to be with Kevin Skipper, who's a professional facilitator and mediator with the Conflict Intervention Service on behalf of the San Francisco Bar Association. So I think we'll be hearing from a couple of people who do know what justice is. And last, I just want to invite you to put it on your calendar for Love Songs and Chocolate on February the 8th at 7 o'clock, a fundraiser that our music program puts on. Tickets are available at the door and on the website. Will you rise once more in body or in spirit? And let's sing a last hymn together, I Know I Can. reach out a hand or touch a shoulder and let us be connected. These hands that hold ours, they are hands that know the shape of justice. May that justice-shaped vision call us onward today and in all the days to come, even when life shatters our hearts, even when our bodies are at risk. May a vision of justice call us on. May it be so, and amen.